The ending of The Old Guard explained. Perhaps there is no movie as iconic this 2020 as the Netflix blockbuster The Old Guard. Adapted from the 2017 Image Comics, The Old Guard is the latest original movie to come from the stables of Netflix. Fair warning before moving forward. This video contains a lot of spoilers, so if you are the type that prefers to watch movies without outside influences, then you had better pause this video and come back to it when you're done with the movie. If you have watched it and still find yourself wondering what the ending of The Old Guard is about, then this video is certainly for you. Today, we'll talk about The Old Guard blockbuster and why you must definitely check it out if you haven't. Enjoy. The cast. Directed by Gina Prince Bythewood, this blockbuster is a thrilling ride, with certainly confusing cameos and an unforeseen but beautiful ending. The plot was masterfully written by Greg Rucka, expertly drawn by Leandro Fernandez, and beautifully colored by Daniela Miwa. Starring in The Old Guard are Charlize Theron, Matthias Schoenaerts, Marwan Kenzari, and Luca Marianelli. These four stars played the characters of the titular team of immortals who have found each other throughout the centuries. Members of The Old Guard are Andy, Joe, Nikki, and Booker. Charlize Theron played Andromach, shortened to Andy, an immortal who has been around for 6,000 years. She has spent numerous lifetimes gaining more experience, knowledge, and grief than she would like to discuss. Joe and Nikki, depicted by Kenzari and Marinelli, respectively, began their lives together as soldiers who fought on opposing sides of the Crusades. They killed each other repeatedly before falling in love. Booker, portrayed by Schoenaerts, is a Frenchman who served in Napoleon's army. He still struggles with the grief and weight that comes with outliving his loved ones. When the Old Guard's cover as immortals was blown during a failed rescue mission, they learned the possible existence of a new immortal named Niall. Played by Kiki Lane, Niall was an American soldier, warily introduced to the immortal fold by Andy, getting front row seats to the Old Guard's fight against the pharmaceutical company that was looking to harness their immortality for profit. What happens at the end of The Old Guard? The third act begins with Booker, Andy, and Niall preparing to confront Copley about what Merrick had done to them. Played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, Copley was a former FBI agent who at the beginning of the movie had set them up to expose them for the immortals they are to the Merrick, played by Harry Melling, the head of the pharmaceutical company hunting them. As she was concerned about the goodbyes she needed to have with her parents in order to begin her journey as an immortal, as well as the uneasiness she felt towards the coming confrontation, Niall takes the team's car, leaving Andy and Booker at Copley's house. A sudden twist comes when the Niall stops the car on the way to the train station and doubles back. She has learned that the gun given to her by Andy was originally from Booker, and the gun has no bullets. Realizing that Booker has set Andy up to be captured and experimented on alongside Nikki and Joe, who had been captured earlier in the movie, Niall returned to Copley's house to help Andy. While trying to confront Copley, Booker shoots Andy, expecting her to heal, but gave her a potentially fatal wound on her side. That revealed a huge truth. Andy's immortality has faded and she can now die. Exposed as a traitor, Booker allowed himself to be captured alongside Andy. Getting there too late, Niall convinced Copley to help her storm the Merrick Labs. The rescue might just be the most straightforward part of the movie ends. Putting her immortality to the test, Niall goes into the lab, making her way past the armed guards to free the team. In the meantime, Joe and Nikki tried to come to grips with Booker's betrayal, as they all sit prepared to become lab rats. Andy encouraged them to put aside the betrayal for the moment and figure a way out of the lab. They managed to escape as Andy and Niall used an old trick to sink Andy's double-headed axe into Merrick's shoulder, and Niall tackling him to his death out of the high-rise. Out of immediate danger, the Old Guard had to decide what to do with Booker. Being an immortal and all, he can't be killed, but he still had to be punished somehow. The punishment they came up with was a pretty tough one too. Delivering the news, Andy informs Booker he is exiled from the family and will only be welcomed back after 100 years on his own. For a Frenchman struggling with the grief of being the only surviving member of his family, the sentence was a tough one. Seeing as she is now mortal, Andy shared an emotional goodbye with her friend, understanding that she might never see him again before the group moves on. The Old Guard ending explained. What sets the Old Guard apart from most other superhero and action movies is that they did not focus solely on their superpower as immortals when they were going after Copley and Merrick. The movie also gave room to contemplate what it really means to be immortal. The movie gives thought to several questions like, what is the burden of immortality? What is the gift of immortality? What should you do when you realize you will live for decades and decades? What does it mean to watch your loved ones die while you get to live on? The most important question the Old Guard might raise is if it is really worth it to live outside the mortal boundary in the end. From the beginning of the movie, it is obvious that Andy, Joe, Nikki, and Booker took their fate in life seriously. Even though they had their moments of shared joy together, they still took their immortality pretty seriously. Even though they could have spent their eternity with outrageous exploits like partying or building ridiculous fortune, the Old Guard chose a simple and nomadic lifestyle. It allows them to take on missions and help others. The Old Guard are heroes working under the cloak of anonymity. Working from an altruistic point of view, the Old Guard are the superheroes we read about and watch in movies but know next to nothing about. The Old Guard decided that since they live forever, why not build up a skill set and put it to judicious use? The Old Guard calls to question our relationship to the idea of immortality and legacy. It questions what we do with the time we have been given in this world. It inquires how we wish to help others with the gifts and talents we've been given, even if said talents do not include hand-to-hand combat and weapons training. The Old Guard did not take a preacher stance or demand you become unwavering in your belief. It simply requests that you consider it. The movie makes use of its characters, Andy, Booker, Joe, Nikki, and the Nile, as examples as it shows them continually deal with their grief, loss, fear, anger, and joy, even as they live life on the fringes. Having lived for so long, one would assume that all members of the Old Guard had found the answers to all the big questions, but the movie showed they have not. The movie highlights that age does not always bestow wisdom, as well as the confidence that comes with it, and growth in a simple lifelong process. The Old Guard has been praised by critics and fans alike as a masterpiece. Do you think it will win an Oscar? Reply in the comment section below. The Old Guard sequel possibilities. The final moments of The Old Guard leave open the possibility of another movie. Andy, Niall, Nikki, and Joe look at Copley's research with awe and marvel, unable to believe all the ways their good acts have rippled out over time. Niles then tells Andy, "Maybe this is the why, Andy." Coming to a decision, Andy charged Copley with helping them stay on any imaginable grid, thus turning them into the ghosts they ought to be, to continue the work they have been doing for centuries. Copley's task was not just to keep them off the grid, but also to find those jobs that are best suited to us. Even though there has been no official word about the sequel to The Old Guard, there are still areas to explore in this story. In spite of the fact that she is now mortal, Andy is still the leader of the team, willing and able to keep fighting until it is time to go. Alongside Nikki, Joe, and Niall, the Old Guard team can still continue to fight the good fight. Andy and her team now have the narrative freedom to figure out how they wish to spend their remaining time together. The incomplete story. The Old Guard did not fully explain the story and future of Cuny, portrayed by Veronica Nyo, the second oldest member of the team who fought alongside Andy for centuries. In what is one of the saddest stories of the Old Guard is the backstory of Kuhn, who suffered a fate worse than death. Andy and Kuhn were captured and tried as witches. They were killed together several times but kept coming back to life. They both believed the next form of death was burning at the stake, but a much crueler future awaited Kuhn. When her cell door opened, she was locked inside a torture device, known as an Iron Maiden, and thrown into the sea where she drowned over and over again. It was not clearly stated why Andy didn't suffer similarly, but she escaped soon after. While Andy was not able to find Kuhn in spite of her best efforts, Kuhn appeared at the end of the movie free from her prison and pursuing her own agenda. How she managed to escape from the constant drowning was intentionally hazy. During Niall's first emergence as an immortal, she had dreams of other immortals. Andy said the dreams signal a new immortal and that they need to find each other. Niles mentioned she dreamt of Kuhn still locked in her coffin and that madness had descended on the fallen warrior. Unless that dream had a metaphorical meaning, then Kuhn was trapped for the most part of the movie. However, the way she was casually drinking wager suggests she was over any lingering trauma that liquids could bring on. Another hazy factor is how she escaped her prison at the bottom of the sea. The comic might have explained better, but the film made several changes to the character. Kuhn was originally Japanese, named Noriko. When Nyo was cast, the character became Vietnamese and was named appropriately. The comic also mentioned that she was washed overboard during a storm, rather than the intentional entrapment the film depicted. Kuhn's escape will be fully revealed and explained in the sequel. It is possible that the metal degradation and 500 years of kicking and pounding also aided to her escape. The various changes that took place from the source material to film on Kuhn's characters also stand to reason that her plans might undergo several changes. The reasons, however, might just be the same. In the comic, she has come to believe that the purpose of the Immortals is not to protect and guide humans, but to punish them instead. The ideology is further enforced by Kuhn's ill treatment at the hands of humanity. In between fights, Kuhn tried to convince Andy to her way of thinking. It is possible that Kuhn turned to Booker to get Andy, either for revenge for not rescuing her, or to make her own team that suits her plans for humanity. Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for decades and decades of good luck.